Hello, my name is Adrian Stevens. In this video we're going to look at recording level and performance. It's important to keep a fairly constant sound level or volume level in a Librivox recording. Why? Well, if somebody is listening in the car, for example, they've got a high level of background noise. If your voice drops off like this, it might be hard to actually hear what they're saying. Also, when you're assembling a dramatic piece, or at least when the editor is assembling a dramatic piece, he wants the readers to produce parts of roughly constant volume, and he doesn't want to keep on having to adjust the volume. So how do we achieve a constant volume level when we record? There are two aspects of performance here. One is what you do with your voice, and the other is what you do with your body. Let me explain. When I'm speaking, I can speak loud or I can speak soft. And the challenge is to speak at a roughly constant level while still giving emphasis to the appropriate words in the speech. And also, the body comes into it because if you really get into this and you rock backwards and forwards near the microphone, all kinds of weird things are going to happen. So you need to be constant different distance between you and the microphone, and to maintain that constant distance. But at the same time, you don't want to be so tense. You want to have a certain degree of relaxation. And if you're kind of holding yourself firmly in one position, you'll become tense, and then that sound will also show that tenseness. There are natural variations in speech. So, for example, if it's a reading and you're quoting somebody, then you might want to indicate it's a quote by changing your voice in some way. So, for instance, you might say, "Where's the man who did this?" said the king. And you notice there's a kind of declamatory speaking out loud voice for the speech part, and then for the interjection, the non-narrated speech, it's a lower voice. And if you watch what I did, I said, "Where's the person who did this?" said the king. Or you can achieve the same just by changing the quality of your voice without really changing the volume very much. "Where's the man who did this?" said the king. It's a bit harder to do and sounds a bit odd. So there will be natural variations, and you can practice with what feels comfortable for you in performance. Let's read a verse and see what happens. I'm going to read this and try and keep the sound level roughly even, and we'll see how well I did afterwards. "The sea and the hills. Who hath desired the sea, the sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl, and the crash of the comber wind-hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm, grey, foamless, enormous and growing, stark calm on the lap of the line, or the crazy-eyed hurricane blowing, his sea in no showing the same, his sea and the same neath each showing, his sea as she slackens or thrills, so and no otherwise, hillmen desire their hills." Okay, so let's hit Control F, and if we have a look at the display in Audacity, we can see there are peaks. So here there's a peak in the speech. This is natural. This kind of degree of variation is acceptable generally. But let's give an example of something that's not acceptable. "The sea and the hills. Who hath desired the sea, the sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl and the crash of the comber wind hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm, grey, foamless, enormous and growing, stark calm on the lap of the line, or the crazy-eyed blowing, his sea in no showing the same, his sea in the same neath each showing, his sea as she slackens or thrills, so and no otherwise, so and no otherwise Hillman desire their hills. Okay, stop that. And now if you look at the display, we've got loud parts, but these aren't the spikes of individual words. This is speaking a part in a loud voice, and then this is speaking a part in a quiet voice. And here I think I must be moving away from the microphone because it's kind of getting quieter. Let's listen what this sounds like. The sea and the hills. Who hath desired the sea? The sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl and the crash of the comber wind hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm, grey, foamless, enormous. Okay, well, you've already heard that. So, if this was submitted for Librivox, the proof listener would probably be saying, there's something really weird going on here. Can you do better? If this was what you produced and you wanted to make it more acceptable, then there are various things you can do. Let's start by analysing the difference between, say, this bunch of words and the next bunch of words. And we can use analyse contrast to do this. So we measure a selection, and it gives us a volume, and then we can measure another selection as the background, and it will tell us the dB difference between these, and it says 13 dBs. So if we were to go and amplify the second part by 13 dBs, it would be similar to the first part. So let's do Effect, Amplify, 13 dBs. And now it looks pretty similar. Let's listen to it. Who hath desired the sea? The sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl and the crash of the comber wind hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm. Well, you can hear that the volume level was fixed, but the quality of the voice changed. And I think I was speaking more softly at that point. So when you change the volume of your voice, you also change the quality or the timbre of your voice. And just amplifying the quiet bits really isn't enough. There's another technique we can use, which is called compression. So we do Effect Compressor. And there are various parameters we can set here. So a ratio of about 2 to 1 is good. And what this did was it made the quieter parts louder without affecting the louder parts. And so the difference between these two parts, the loud part and the soft part, is now less. And in fact, if we measure them with the Analyze tool, Analyze Contrast, Measure Selection, Measure Selection, you can see the difference is now 7 dBs. Previously it was 13 dBs. If we listen to these again, who hath desired the sea? The sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and that might be acceptable as a kind of compromise. You can give higher levels of compression. So if I Effect Compress and give it a ratio of, say, 4 to 1, and now look at the difference. Analyze Contrast, Always go to the wrong place for that. Measure selection. Measure selection. You can see the difference is now 3.7 dBs. Originally it was 13, then with 2 to 1 it was 6, and now it's 3 dB. So really there's not a huge amount of difference now. Who hath desired the sea, the sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl and the crash of the comber wind hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm, grey, foamless, enormous and growing. So that's done a pretty successful job of actually equalising the volume. We're now going to use a tool called the envelope tool to modify the volume of a recording. Let's make this bigger so that we can see what's going on. We select the envelope tool by hitting this icon here, and what this allows us to do is to drop handles. You can have as many handles as you like, you're not limited to 4 candles. Sorry, that was a British joke. Look up the 2 Ronnie's 4 candles sketch. So the places where we want to adjust the volume, we can add a handle. And what I'm going to do here is drag this handle down, and you can see it's created a curve. So this blue line is now a volume adjustment. What I'm trying to do is to counteract this decrease here. Flatten it out. And I've more or less flattened it out there so that now it's constant volume. Of course it's not loud enough, but it's a constant volume. Now we could do the same here. We could add handles each side of this so that we're reducing the volume of that. Now we want to increase that volume. So you see, we're by eye we're equalising the volume. We're not doing a great job because, well, let's see how far we can get this similar to that. So by eye, I'm kind of equalising the volume throughout. Let's listen to that and see how well it went. The sea and the hills. Who hath desired the sea, the sight of salt water unbounded, the heave and the halt and the hurl and the crash of the comber wind hounded, the sleek-barrelled swell before storm, grey, foamless, enormous and growing, stark calm on the lap of the line, or the crazy-eyed blowing. Well, it's not perfect by any means. A few more minutes tinkering around with this could probably make that sound reasonable. Whether this is any quicker than selecting and doing amplify on selected bits, I don't know. So in this video I've shown that it's important to record at a constant level and the techniques during performance that help that. Also how to recover from a recording where there are changes in volume level, either by modifying the volume of individual parts or by applying compression or using the envelope tool. Thank you and goodbye.